MPH Sports Podcast. Talk sport and property with sports people discussing their careers and how property played a part in it.
Savannah Marshall, welcome to Talk Sport and Property. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. First and foremost, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for coming on. It's great to see you. We've known each other for a little while now, so I was desperate to get you on the pod. Thank you for accepting. So I know you've probably listened to every single episode that we've done on Talk Sport and Property, Savannah. But just to remind you of the process, we are going to talk about your career, and then we're going to ask you hopefully some fairly awkward questions. And then we're going to go into my favourite subject, which is property, as you know. So let's start. Savannah, born in Hartlepool, 29 years of age, nicknamed the Silent Assassin, 10 professional fights, 10 wins, 8 by knockout. And you stand before me right now as the current WBO middleweight champion of the world. Now that must feel pretty good.
It does actually. It really does. To be honest, it might sound big-headed, but I've just changed my bio on my Instagram to champion of the world. And I was thinking, God, it's mental even just seeing it. It's crazy. The whole world and I'm the champion.
I know. Well, am I going to see this belt at some point?
It's in the gym. I train in Huey Fewey's gym and he's got like a massive cabinet. I've got it put in the gym. But the reason why, because it was only under my bed. So at least in the gym, people can see rather than just being hidden away.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. They're just dust collectors, aren't they, I think? They're just, you'll know we are kids, like they'll treasure them now, but by the time they get to about, 18, they're just in a box in the loft.
Yeah. Let's take you back to the beginning. When and where did you start boxing and why?
So I first started, I was 11 when I first went to the gym. I was always dead sporty and dead active, and it was just through friends. I'm from quite a rough estate in Hartlepool. I've always been really quiet. I've always been the type where I'd never go out with my friendship group. I've never liked being the centre of attention, parties, anything like that. I'm the one who's just in the corner, like thinking, "Mum, please take me home." And I don't know what the interest was with boxing because no one in my family's ever boxed. My dad's hasn't got a violent bone in his body. I've never watched boxing or anything like that. The closest I'd ever come was me and my younger brother just used to fun fight. And then that was closest to violence, so to speak, I'd ever been. But so one of my friends' neighbours to box, and I remember him, I always tell the story, I remember him running up the street with a little plastic trophy boxer saying, look what I've won. And I remember thinking, oh, I want a trophy. I want to win one of them trophies. So that's the reason why I started, just to win a little plastic cup.
You started at 11, so I think you started training at a club called Headland, is that right?
I did, Hartlepool Headland.
Yeah. Were there many other girls there, sort of your age, or were there any girls there full stop?
Well, ironically, the club was actually called Hartlepool Headland Boys Club. Headland Boys Club it was called. And I was quite lucky because at the time there was a female boxer, and she was the pinnacle of female boxing in England. And she was actually from my hometown. She was called Amanda Coulson. So actually before I'd started, I told my mum I wanted to go. And Amanda was fighting. So she took me along to see Amanda. I think she was hoping it'd put me off. Anyway, I watched Amanda fight, and I remember thinking, I remember saying, oh, I want to go. So anyway, I went along, and the coach called Tim Coulter, I remember going in and saying, oh, can I join? And I remember him half shouting at me saying, well, if you've just come to mess about, you can leave now. And I remember thinking, oh God, they're strict in here. But Tim had openly said now that he didn't want me there. If anything, I was just a hindrance. There was no other females in the club. Like I said, he just seen me as a hindrance. He didn't want me there. And then after a while, he'd come to the gym and I'd be the first one there, stood outside waiting for it to open. I'd be the last one to leave the gym. Sometimes I'd be the only one that would turn up. And like I said, even in sparring, I think he half wanted the boys to give me a bit of a hiding so that I'd get upset and not come back. But if anything, it'd give me an hiding and I'd give them, give them just as good back. So if anything, it made me want it more. I loved it. I loved the environment. I loved the gym. I'm very competitive. And the thing I liked about it was everything was a competition. Who could hit the bag the most? Who could do the most press-ups? So that I think that's what initially drew me into the sport.
Wow. Because I think that when you was part of Headland and you were going around to other gyms looking for more sparring partners, other managers of those clubs, they weren't always letting you get involved, were they?
Yeah, so there's a story where I was only about 14, and just going back, I loved everything about training, but if there was anything I didn't love, it was the sparring. And I believe that was because I had to win. And if I didn't win or I'd get caught with a couple of shots, I'd go home and I'd sulk and it'd play on my mind and I'd beat myself up. I was only 13. So if anything, it was sparring I didn't like. So every Sunday we used to go to another club sparring, and we went to a club in Sunderland. And I remember walking in and I remember the coach pointing at me and saying, "What's that?" And at 13-year-old, and I just pretended I didn't hear. I just looked away. And it wasn't Tim, the coach, that took it. It was a different coach. And he said, "Well, it's our female fighter." And he was like, "There's no females allowed in here. It's a boys' club. Girls aren't allowed. She's not allowed to spar." So I wasn't allowed to spar. But at the time, if anything, I just thought, well, I didn't want to spar anyway. I don't like sparring. That's what I thought. And if anything, I thought, oh yeah, thank God, I can just watch. But I always think back, anybody else who didn't have that mentality would have just thought, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. Like I said, when he first pointed at me saying, "What's that?" And I just looked away. Like, how demoralising that is that for a young 13-year-old girl in a gym full of men and boys.
Was this something that you shared with your parents about?
No, I was dead quiet. I never told my mum and dad nothing. Like I said, if anything, I seen it as a plus because I didn't want to spar. The upside of that is that club now has had multi-female champions.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened to that coach, but like I said, they've excelled in female boxing.
Well, look, clearly you had this burning desire and love for the sport, and you positioned yourself to compete as an amateur in the 2010 World Championships in Bridgetown, Barbados, winning the silver medal at only 19 years of age. You remember the trip well?
Yeah, I do, because I always joke with my friends and family saying I've never had a real job, because you could say because I love what I do. But I left college at the age of 18. I did a sports course, BTEC diploma in sport. And then when I'd left at 18, I got scouted for the GB squad. So I literally went for college to train full time at the Institute of Sport in Sheffield, where we'd be there Monday to Thursday. Now, bearing in mind, I'm from quite a deprived area in Hartlepool. We never had nothing. I think holidays, it'd be like, Magaluf like cheap Spainy holidays type thing. And anyway, I got selected to go to the World Championships. And the pre-camp was in Miami and the tournament was in Barbados. So I remember just thinking, wow, this is amazing. I'm getting paid to do what I love, and I'm traveling the world for free. So it was just crazy.
So what happened at the championships? How long were you there for? How many fights did you have?
So I was 19. So in the world of boxing, that's considered a baby. You're still a baby. I think you turn senior at 18, where you can, but then you're boxing women who are in their 30s, being on the circuit for years. So really, I don't think anyone expected me to do anything. I'd won the Europeans as a youth, and I think I'd won a couple of multi-nation championships before then, before I'd went to Barbados. So, like I said, there was no pressure on me. I don't think anyone expected me to win anything. Anyway, I ended up getting to the final, and I think I'd had 4 or 5 fights in a week. So it was pretty heavy duty. And then got the final. I boxed an American, and I ended up losing 5-4. So I'd lost by a point. But like I said, it was just crazy. It was I never once thought I'd even do anything. If anything, I was just living in the moment, thinking, "Oh God, I'm going to Barbados." Yeah, we were boxing and then going sitting by the pool on the afternoon. It was just a really good trip.
I was going to say, it wasn't that bad, was it?
Well, it wasn't. I remember thinking, "Wow, do you know what? 19-year-old, this is amazing."
If you're thinking it's that good, then I can imagine that really just giving you that extra drive and determination to reach out to the next one, because the following year you won bronze in Rotterdam in the European Championships before heading to China to compete in the AIBA Women's World Boxing Championships, where you actually won gold. I mean, your first gold medal, was it? And what did that success and the experience before do for your confidence still at such a young age?
Well, like I said, it was just, I never really thought about the magnitude of it. I just loved boxing. I never thought about what was going on around me or what could manifest after. So I remember the Olympics had just been announced for boxing had just been introduced in the Olympics for 2012. So because it was all new, there was only 12 spaces. And because they consider it a World Games, there was like only 3 boxers from Europe, 3 from the Americas, like that. So the only qualifying event was the World Championships. But the way it worked out at the time, the strongest continent at my weight was Europe. So I remember even in the quarterfinals, there was something like 6 of them were from Europe. So, you could have had an African who'd been beaten the first round, but had qualified for the Olympics because she got the furthest out the Africans. And then there's, like I said, in the quarters, there's like 6 of us who are from Europe still battling for that one of them 3 spots. So it ended up happening that I had to get to the final to secure my place for the Olympic Games, which was crazy because, like I said, there was people who qualified in the prelims, but it just so happened the final had taken place on my 21st birthday. I always think, when people say, "What did you do for your 21st?" I can say I became a world champion. Yeah.
So the next challenge was the 2012 London Olympics. Can you talk us through how you felt about representing Great Britain, your expectations, because clearly you're quite hard on yourself, and what happened?
So I remember qualifying. It was like, wow, finally. Like I said, I get so far now. They were saying, you only have to get the quarters, and then I get the quarters, and it was like you have to get the semi. So it was just a massive relief. But then with all that came this immense pressure, being the shy, quiet girl. I was the favourite for the Olympic gold medal. And because I was the number 1, I'd got a bye to the quarters, I think. So really, I only had to win 1 fight for the medal, for a bronze. And I just became so over. Can't really, at the time, looking back now, I didn't know anything about mental health, or it's only now everyone's speaking about it. But looking back now, I think I was just riddled with anxiety over it. I had people coming up to me saying, "I've just put £1,000 on you to win gold," in just this wave of, "Oh my God, what if I don't win gold? What if I'm not good enough?" But I was good enough because the 12 people who'd qualified for the Olympic Games, I'd beat 8 of them, 3 months prior. So it just became this just awful experience, even being in the village, walking around, seeing Usain Bolt and mixing with these people. And it was just, I just couldn't handle it. It just, like, I didn't have the skills or the mindset to turn this wave of emotion into a positive, to enjoy it. I absolutely hated it. And I remember I drew a Kazakhstan girl, and to be honest, I've only just watched that fight in the first lockdown. That many years after, I've only just watched it, and there's no way I got beat in that fight. I admit I didn't box nowhere near my best, but I didn't lose. But then I always counteract it and think, well, if I did win, could I have handled everything that had come with it? Because I was still this quiet girl who I would never have done this. No way would I've never done this. I'd have probably said, yeah, then turn my phone off this morning so you couldn't contact me. So I ended up getting beat. And for me, it was just, the feeling was, oh, thank God that's over. That was how I felt. It wasn't, oh, I threw it away. It was, thank God that's over. I don't have to go through that again. And all my family and friends had come down to watch. And I literally got beat, went back to the village, packed my bag and come home. I remember and my sister rang me, was like, right, wait there, I'll meet you, I'll come home with you. And I remember, I'll never forget this, I remember driving up the M1 or A1. My sister was in the passenger seat, and I remember looking at her and saying, oh, thank God that's over. Thank God I can go home to Little Hartlepool. Do you know, I had a chance to change my life, and I just wanted to go back to this little depressing town called Hartlepool. But like I said, I always had ways of counteracting it. So I was very good mates with Nicola Adams at the time, and she won gold, obviously. And I remember she was getting all this sponsorship. People were giving her cars. I remember someone gave her a Rolex. And I remember thinking, oh, I wish I had a Rolex. I wish I had a nice car. But then on the flip side, she'd be doing things for comic relief, going on the Graham Norton show. And I remember thinking, well, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't think now worse than doing that. So in a way, I believe the way it happened built me up and made me a stronger person, because I don't believe that I could have ever handled being a gold medalist at that time.
That's really interesting. Wow. Thank you for being so honest and transparent. You know, I was going to ask you a couple of other questions around that, but now I'm glad I'm not. I guess you probably used how you felt and how you experienced it under the Olympics when 2 years later you competed in the Commonwealth Games, winning gold and becoming Commonwealth champion. How did you handle that?
Well, this is the crazy thing about it. So I got beat in them Olympics, and then I'd always go to a tournament and I'd win again, and I'd box unbelievable. No one would get near me, and I'd think, well, I am good enough. I know I've got the skills. So really, it was like talking about mindset, I'd have the mindset where, oh, I'm going to get beat. What if I get beat? And then on the flip side, it'd be like, oh, well, yeah, I am one of the best in the world because I've won this. Do you know? So it was constantly up and down, up and down. But yeah, winning the Commonwealth in Glasgow to me was like a mini Olympics, because it was in front of all my family and friends again. So it was kind of, I had the chance to put them demons to rest. So because I always felt that I wasn't battling my opponent, I was battling the emotion and stuff around it. So like I said, the pressures of your family and friends watching, the pressures of what if I lose. So it wasn't what was in front of me, it was kind of what was around me and what was going in my head that was the biggest fight for me.
Are you not mentally prepared for what is about to happen if those fights became victories, and what would happen to your life beyond that?
So on GB, we always had a psychologist. I think it's one of them where if you're not going saying, look, why am I struggling? But like I said, my personality, I was very quiet. I never spoke about anything. So it was one of them. I think everyone thought I was going to win the gold. Everyone thought everything was fine, and they would do, because like I said, I was a world champion. I was the favourite going into the tournament. So why would they not? Until disaster hit, and it was like, oh my God, she struggles with her head. Why isn't she prepared? So I think you don't really know until these things happen.
Next up, you qualify for Team GB and you head to Rio for the 2016 Olympic Games. What happened there?
So from 2012 to 2016, that was the hardest 4 years of my life. And that was when I started to fall out of love with boxing. So it got to the point where I'd win a tournament like the Commonwealth Games, I'd get injured, need an operation, 6 months out, come back, win a tournament, or get beat off someone who wasn't on my level. Because although boxing's one of them sports where it's not like any other sport, the results in other people's hands. So you've got 3 judges, and if it's not like football, you score 4 against 2, you've won. In boxing, if them judges don't think you've won, then the victory's out of your hands, the result's out of your hands. So I was going to tournaments half-hearted, not bothered, because I'd been on the system for getting nearly 6 years at this point, and it's you're boxing the same people, going to the same countries, same tournaments, and you do lose that Miami, Barbados, wow, this is great feeling. So I started getting beat off, throwing results away, not enjoying it, and it became a job. I was just getting paid, and it was like, right, well, if I don't turn up to training, then I won't get paid. So that's how it become. And it got to the point where I remember there was a tournament in Spain, and I got beat off my rival, my British rival, who was Welsh. She was the number 2, I was the number 1. And I believed I won that fight, but she got the decision. And straight away, I remember getting back to the hotel, throwing my stuff, getting ready. I was thinking, right, I think Chantel Cameron, we're sharing a room with Chantel Cameron and Nicola Adams, and I think they'd both got beat or something, and thrown my stuff in the corner and think, right, come on, girls, let's get ready, let's go out. That's how it had become. Whereas a couple of years previous, I'd get beat, I'd sit and cry my heart out. But at this point, I didn't care anymore. It was, oh, well, wasn't my fault. It was the judge's fault. And anyway, there was a coach there at the time called Amanda Grock, who'd known me since I was about 16. And for some reason, she was at this tournament, and I remember banging on the door and saying, right, come on, we're going for a walk. And I was like, oh, no, Mandy, I'm getting ready, I'm going out. She was like, come on, we're going for a walk. And we were walking down the beach, and she'd kind of give me a bit of a telling off and was like, do you actually want to qualify for these Olympics? Because the way you're going on, you're not going to. And I was like, oh, well, I do, yeah. She was like, look, you've got a second chance. You've got a second chance. So anyway, I kind of got my act together, and I'd qualified. I got myself a bronze medal in the Wales, which was probably the best result I'd had in 2 years. So I proved I was still one of the best in the world. Got myself to Rio, boxed a Swede in the first round, beat her, and I'd boxed the second round. Again, it was for a medal. I'd boxed with my nemesis from Holland, and she'd won. Can't remember the score, but it was the rounds. They changed the scoring system, so it wasn't points anymore, it was rounds. And I think she'd won 3 rounds to 1. But like I said, there was a lot of controversy over scoring at the time. There was a big thing going on. I don't know if people out there know Mick Conlon of Ireland. He got beat off a Russian and he kicked off massively. He took his vest off in the ring. It was all over the news. And one of my fights was actually in the press for being one of them controversial fights where a lot of people would have said I'd have won, the scoring wasn't fair. So that's how that ended. And then quite funnily enough, I remember watching a film the other day, and it was about someone competing in the Winter Olympics. And I remember saying, the West position to come is 4th. And I remember thinking, well, I've got 2 4th place certificates at home. Try and beat that.
Under the bed, collecting dust.
Yeah, it is. I haven't brought myself around to frame them yet.
Savannah, in 2017, you decided to turn pro. You signed for the legend that we know, Floyd Mayweather. What made you make that decision at that point of your career?
So after 2016, I'd had enough. Like I said, it'd been an awful 4 years, and I didn't enjoy boxing no more. I just didn't. So I was at the point where it was female boxing, pro boxing wasn't really a thing. And I remember thinking, right, well, I don't want to wait 4 years for Tokyo. I don't enjoy it. I can't do it no more. It doesn't make me happy. So I'd left the programme. I'd left the Olympic programme, and I had no ambition to turn pro, never did. And anyway, Mutual Contacts had got in touch with me and said, oh, look, Savannah, Mayweather Promotions want to offer you a pro contract. What do you think with your pro debut on the Mayweather-McGregor undercard? And I just remember thinking, oh my God, someone up there doesn't want me to quit, to sign. I just remember thinking, the money team, this is it, I'm set for life, wow. It was to move to America, train in the Mayweather gym. They'd offered me a car, an apartment, all this, and I just bit their hand off. I remember thinking, wow, like I said, it's a sign. So I ended up going over to America, realising how brutal professional boxing can be. there was a lot of broken promises. And although I live in America, the business side just wasn't for me. Like I said, it was a lot of broken promises. It cost me more money being there than what I earned. So it wasn't so much the money team. I ended up coming home 6 months later.
Out of interest, and we'll get to that point of what you did next, but how did that proposition come about? What was promised? And if you don't feel comfortable answering this is fine. But what was promised and what was unbroken? Because I think of the Savannah at 19 who was worried about the hype and maybe those decisions back then, or the outcomes back then, was probably for the right reasons. Now you're chucking yourself into the lion's den in front of Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor in Nevada with millions of people watching around the world. You win, correct? You win the fight. Yeah. Surely there's hype after, more sponsorship opportunities. What was all the promises? Why didn't that work out? And who was around you at the time to advise you on this?
When I'd accepted this contract from Mayweather, I remember, I think I had 6 weeks till my debut. I was still living in England. I'd sold my house, sold my car, ready for this big move, this big life-changing opportunity. And the contact, I remember being on the phone to him saying, oh, look, I've never trained in a pro gym. I've never trained with a pro coach. Although it's the same sport, it's completely different, amateurs and pros. So at the time, he was like, oh, well, look, I've got one of my fighters training in Peter Fury's gym, sparring Hughie Fury. And he said, you're more than welcome to come down and he'll show you, little bits and bobs or whatever. So I remember going down in Bolton and Tommy Fury was there. And I asked, he put me in with Tommy. And I remember Peter saying to Tommy, who was his uncle, you dare touch air, don't you dare lay a glove on air. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be easy, this. I'm going to absolutely batter him. That spar was my introduction to pro boxing. I absolutely couldn't lay a glove on him. He was slipping, sliding, rolling. He had his hands down, and I couldn't have hit him with a handful of rice. And I remember getting frustrated. And anyway, I'd go out the ring, and Peter was laughing. He was like, I'll teach you little bits and bobs. So he invited me back, and I did my whole 6-week camp with Peter Fury before I went to America. But in them 6 weeks, he'd say little stuff to me like, look, don't get caught up in all this crap. He was like, pro boxing, it's a cruel world. Just look after yourself. Don't, if it's not in writing, it's, don't believe it's going to happen. People are only after money in the pros, this and that. So, like I said, I was promised my own place, my own apartment, but obviously me being naive and not having a clue, it wasn't in writing and this and that, and I was promised fights. I remember being over there the 6 months that I was there, and I trained for 2 or 3 fights, and they didn't come off. And being on GB, you get paid monthly because you're lottery funded. So it's lottery funded, it's tax-free, which is great. And in the pro world, if you don't fight, you don't get paid. So obviously I had me debut. I'm training for these fights that I'm promised and they're just not happening. They're just falling through. So yeah, like I said, the money I earned through my debut, I'd spent within a couple of weeks. Felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. This big dream just kind of didn't happen for me.
So you teamed up with Hennessy Sport. The following year, 2018, that was a big year for you, right? Now I'm going to try and get these names correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you beat both Esther Konechna and Alejandra Alea, is that right? Before setting up a fight against Argentina's Janina Orozco for the vacant WBA Intercontinental Super Middleweight title in Bulgaria. Was this the first belt you had your sights on? And how confident was this Savannah Marshall going into this fight?
So I owe a lot of who I am today to Peter. I don't know if you're big on the Furies anyway, but I couldn't actually say what it is, but I think it's just the way they are. Like, nothing's impossible. You know, they just speak with this confidence, and especially with Peter. You know, I come to Peter with opponents all the time, and I'd say, or even in sparring, I'd be like, well, Peter, if she does this, what do I do? And he'd be like, well, no problem. You know how to do this, so this would work. Like, there's nothing, there's no one's unbeatable, nothing's impossible. And I think over the years and the years that I've been with them, even that short 6 weeks that I trained for my debut, I think Peter really rubbed off on me. And I like I said, I owe a lot of who I am today to Peter.
Your relationship with Hughie, I see some of the cruel, crazy training regimes that you guys have to go through. What's your relationship with him like?
So I think, obviously, it's no secret that the whole Fury family are from like a travelling background. So for me, I always think, God, what would it must have been like, not just for Peter, but for Hughie to have, you know, just a girl in the gym, whereas we've got this persona. This is not like Peter and Hughie anyway, but the whole travelling persona is, you know, men go to work and the women stay at home type thing. So I do think like what it must have been like for Hughie, just for this girl to be in the gym, you know, hitting the bag next to him. And he's got sisters, he's got a couple of sisters, Hughie, as well. But no, thing is that they've always been respectful, always looked after me. They've never treated me no different, you know, so they've really took me in. Even Peter, I do see Peter as a bit of a father figure. Yeah, and even Hughie, so I train in Hughie's gym now. He's got his own gym, and he's always, you know, he's letting me train in his gym. He's letting me use all the facilities and stuff, and he's quiet. Hughie reminds me of like the big giant gentleman. He never says a bad word about anyone. He just gets his head down, does his thing, cracks on, and yeah, it's great because the training is hard. It's really hard, and you know, knowing that someone's going through it with you, yeah.
Well, next time I'm in Cheshire, I'm going to see this gym.
Yeah, you'll have to.
I want to fast forward to your next 4 fights, because this now sets you up for a WBO middleweight title opportunity against fellow Brit Hannah Rankin at the Wembley Arena. Did you feel that everything that you had done since the age of 11 years of age, where you fell in love with boxing, was going into this fight?
No, not really. This is crazy, because if you'd have asked me 4 years ago, do I believe in myself, I'd have said no. But since I've turned pro and I've been with Peter, I've never doubted myself. I've never doubted my ability, and I know how good I am. And I remember thinking, why aren't I getting the opportunity? I'm seeing other girls box and get world titles. And I used to think, well, they're not on my level. Why are they getting opportunities that I'm not? It took a long time for this opportunity to come along. I was meant to fight for the WBO light heavyweight title in the March, just before lockdown hit, 2 weeks before it got pulled. And I was meant to fight in June. That never happened. So when this come about to fight for the middleweight title with Hannah, I remember training towards it, and then even week of the fight, Peter tested positive for COVID.
Oh no!
It got pulled again. And I remember thinking, why is it always something against me? Which is a bit like when I was an amateur. I used to think, you know, I'm given this opportunity, this and that. But anyway, it got postponed 2 weeks later. Peter tested negative, so the fight got put on. And even then, I remember being in the fight bubble 2 days before, and saying, Peter, a little bit of me doesn't believe this is actually happening. And he was like, well, you better, because it is. So yeah, when that happened and I'd won, I remember getting like quite emotional and thinking, God, finally, it's happened for me. Nothing's gone wrong. It's happened.
And you recently retained the title against Maria, live on Sky Sports, which we all watched, performed superbly, which we spoke about beforehand. What is next for the Silent Assassin?
So I'm fighting again in July. So I've had 2 weeks off, ate everything in sight, I've had enough of being normal. So I'm actually back in training. I'm fighting in July, and I'm defending. No, I'm looking to unify the division, so get another belt.
Okay. And do you know who this is, or do you know, or are you allowed to share with us?
So at the minute, there's a couple of opponents flying about. Like I said, it's in July, so plenty of time. Just waiting to see which one it'll be.
Okay. Well, I think I have to say on behalf of all British boxing fans, good luck. Continue doing what you're doing. You're absolutely smashing it. Right, we're now going to move on to a quick question fire round. You ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. How many medals do you have?
Oh, I'd say about 50.
Okay. Your best friend in boxing?
Chantel Cameron, April Hunter. Love to.
Why are you called the Silent Assassin?
I'm called the Silent Assassin because I'm not so much now, but I used to be so painfully shy. And we used to have media days at Sheffield on Team GB, and they'd turn up and I'd just be one-word answers. Yes. You looking forward to the tournament? Yes. Are you going to win gold? Yes. And then I'd just like try and get it over with so I could just go back to the apartment.
Do you have a pre-fight routine?
As an amateur, yes. I used to say a couple of Hail Marys. I used to have a can of Red Bull. Now, as a pro, I don't have any. I can honestly say in 10 fights as a pro, I've never felt nervous. And it's crazy. If anything, it's more excitement to show people what I can do.
Amazing. What is your entrance music and how do you decide on that?
So my entrance music is the Eurythmics Sweet Dreams. And how that come about is one of my friends had made me a film reel of me highlights as a pro. And for some reason, he put that song as the background. It got played. It was all over the internet. And then I thought, all right, I'm going to have that. And that's quite catchy. So yeah, that's how that come about.
So what is the one thing that you have to compromise on to become the world champion?
So I'm world champion at middleweight. So I'm not a natural middleweight. I'm bigger than a middleweight. So when I'm actually fighting for a world title, I've got to have a strict diet knowing that I can make that weight. Otherwise, if I don't, there's no way I'd be able to make it.
So eating absolutely everything in the kitchen cupboards right now is probably not ideal for this, is it?
I was actually saying to someone in this morning in the gym, I think I've got an eating disorder. That 2 weeks I had off, I was just shoving even if it was just butter and bread, just constantly shoving things in my mouth, knowing that I've got to diet soon. So it was like, quick, get it all in. I've only got another day. And I think it's like an eating disorder.
I've killed Easter. Them poor kids of mine, they didn't get anything. I'm assuming you're a Hartlepool fan?
Newcastle.
Are you?
Actually, the two.
Do you go, or did you go before lockdown?
Yeah, well, I've got an older sister, and there's quite an age gap. There's like a 13-year age gap, but she's been with her husband since they were 13. So he's always been in my life, and he was a professional footballer, and he actually started out at Newcastle. So I always remember going as a kid and like watching him play.
If you wasn't a boxer, what would you be doing?
Well, I'm quite practical. Like I like practical things, and I change. Even now, I'm 30 next month, and even now I always think, after boxing, I'm going to do this, and then next week it'll be like, oh, I'd be quite interested in that. I'm always changing. But I remember when I was when I'd left school at 16, I was obsessed with the film Flashdance. I actually wanted to be a welder. So I remember going to college. I remember going to the open day, and I remember my mum being, "Look, Savannah, there's no girls here. You'll have no friends." And I remember thinking, I remember going, "Oh, Mum, I really want to do it." And the course tutor had brought something up about people having asthma, and she's like, "Right, that's it. You can't do it. You've got asthma." And I actually had sports-induced asthma, but she was like, "Oh, she can't do it. She's got asthma." And I thought, I haven't. But who knows? I haven't a clue.
So on your 30th birthday,
Yeah.
you have to be the centre of attention now. You know that, right?
I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I remember a couple of years ago, well, I was about 18. I'd won a sports award in the Northeast, and all my family and friends had bought tickets, and I was, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Anyway, I was getting picked up at like 7 o'clock from my brother-in-law who played for Newcastle. And he come to the door because all my family and friends had gone because it was a 3-course meal, whatever. And he come to the door and was like, "I was Savannah, you ready?" I was like, "No, I'm not going." And I just shut the door and I never turned up. I just couldn't handle being centre of attention, everyone looking.
That's funny. Who is your promoter?
My promoter is Matchroom Eddie Hearn.
And in light of the AJ Fury fight, I think I know the answer to this one, but who are you backing?
Well, to be honest, I seen AJ fight in December, and I remember thinking, oh God, he's made some changes. He's a lot more looser, a lot more, because before he was quite stiff. And if any boxing fans out there, he used to kind of burn out after the 5th round, and I used to think it was because he was so stiff and tense, whereas he's a lot more looser now. But I do believe Tyson beat him quite comfortably, if not stop him, just because of his movement and obviously the build-up, all that, the way he goes on, it draws you in.
Is it something you're going to be attending?
I'd love to attend. I would love to attend, but I don't think I could afford a ticket.
Well, let's wrap that up. We'll come back and talk property.
Talk Sport and Property Podcast, sponsored by MPH Sports Property Academy. Download the app today from the App Store or Google Play by typing in MPH Sports, the trusted go-to app for sports people looking to buy or learn about property.
Savannah, we met about 18 months ago in Manchester. You very kindly came over to see me and my son Jamie in a restaurant playing sort of pub games and stuff like that, which really was fondly. In fact, you and I were also going to meet a second time, but because you were going to be my guest in a box at Old Trafford, and you last minute blew me out. What happened that night? I can't remember now.
I can't remember, to be fair.
I was looking forward to...
I think I was training.
You were training, maybe you were just running late, I think.
I'm not sure, I can't remember. I remember that though, because I remember you taking photos, and I remember thinking, God, I've missed out big time here.
It was a good night. But no, I know you have a passion for property. I mean, when did that appetite start, and when did you buy your first property?
So I've always, to be honest, that sounds ironic, but I always liked homes under the hammer. I remember...
You're looking at me as if you recognise me on this programme. On this programme. Somewhere it'll be on Google.
Yeah. But I remember walking home from school, and I remember that there was this old rundown house, and it was like that for years. And I remember always going past thinking, oh, I'd love to look in there, or I'd love to do what they do on Homes Under the Hammer. Anyway, someone had bought it and done it all up, but because I used to walk past it every day, only from the outside, I'd see like the changes, and I remember thinking, oh wow, that's amazing. So I've always been interested. I bought my first house when I was 20, obviously being on the squad and getting paid. So bought my first house. It was literally 30-second walk from my mum's round the corner. So yeah, I ended up buying that, and I'd done a little bit to it myself, not personally, but knocked a couple of walls down and this and that. But yeah, that was my first property. And like I said, when I moved to America, I sold it, and then thinking I'd never come back 6 months later, and even now I still can't drive past it because I think, oh, that's my house there, shouldn't be in there.
I can't believe you sold that.
Well, yeah, because I was ready for the American dream, wasn't I? It was kind of right. I'm not coming back. This is it. New life. New team.
Out of interest, how many do you have today? And how are they performing for you?
When I went to America, I'd obviously sold the house, and I didn't think I'd come back. So I'd come back and I was like, right, well, I had no sponsors. I had no income. So I remember meeting up with a friend that I've got who's got a property management company. So basically she finds tenants for people. So she's like, look, this is what you want to do. You want to get yourself a couple of little terraced houses and just rent them out that way. So I ended up, wasn't earning a lot of money or anything like that, but it was just enough kind of to pay me petrol down Bolton every week or type thing. So it was quite a good investment, because without that, I wouldn't have had a penny coming in. So it was something working its way out in the background that I never had to think about. It was just, a couple of £100 coming in every month. Like I said, that would pay me fees for training.
So how many have you got now? Is it 2, 3?
4.
You've got 4 now. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How are they performing? Do you mind sort of telling us? Because from memory, 1 or 2 of these you haven't got mortgages on, right?
No, but they're nothing. They're just little terraced houses, and I'm from the northeast, and obviously from the north. I think in Hartlepool alone, you can buy a house for £6,000 in Hartlepool. So it's kind of it's cheap as chips, really.
The £60,000 that you've got, or the £60,000 asset that you have, what sort of rent are you getting for that?
You can get about 500, 550 a month. This is the thing I've learned. So with them type of properties, someone who's, no disrespect to anyone, but someone who's working wouldn't pay that much to, rent a house like what it is, for instance. So you're more than likely to get someone in benefits who's getting the rent paid for them. Do you know what I mean? Type thing. So I've had not a lot, but I have had properties where haven't been left in the greatest of states, and me being me, and it's my house, it's something I've invested in, it destroys me. I can't stand it. Do you know what I mean? But it's part and parcel of it. It's the stress that comes with it. Like one of the houses that I bought, I actually lived in it, so I didn't have to pay stamp duty. And then I moved out of there because I moved to Manchester, and I'd rented it out, and I just couldn't handle the thought of having someone in my house. I think it was because I lived there for a couple of months, but it was like, it's stressful. It is stressful. I don't know how people do it where they've got, 15, 20 houses. It is, and finding the perfect tenants is hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
I mean, you've been sort of following our progress in sport over the past few years. I mean, we're about to launch a facilities management program where we can actually take on athletes' portfolios and mouthpiece, so we can handle any tenancy disputes, we can handle any tenancy renewals, we can handle the control of the new let that may happen in the future. And I think that just takes away the pressure and the potential burden of being a landlord, because investment's fun, and I know it's helped you in your career, isn't it? Obviously, during those, you earn your money from your flights or your sponsorships, like you said. But if you go through a bit of a flat spot where the income isn't coming in as what it would have done, you sometimes are going to have to rely on that income. You should just enjoy being an investor. That's what investors want, to make their money perform better. Did you buy these properties in your name, or did you buy them through like a separate property company?
Like I said, I didn't have a clue. I used to watch Homes Under the Hammer. That is, I never knew anything about mortgages, I never paid tax because I was lottery funded, so I never got taxed. So coming into this whole pro game, it was like, wow. I remember on my pro debut in America, the tax is different over there. I got emergency tax because I wasn't an American citizen. And I looked at my pay slip and I was like, oh my God, where is my money gone? And it was, it was kind of a kick in the teeth. But, so as time's gone on, for me, I'm that type of person where I have to learn myself. If I've got someone there saying, right, do this, do that, I kind of don't get it unless I'm reading it myself, looking and researching myself. So as time went on, I'd learned that having all that money, and you told me, to be fair, having all that money tied up in one property is no good, because that one property could easily become 3 and you're earning 3 times as much money. So we were just saying previous that the first lockdown, I actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then that's when it was like, right, I don't need all the money to buy the house. I can just put the deposit down and then get the mortgages. So actually in the second lockdown, I actually done the CMAP mortgage course.
Wow.
But I haven't done the exams. So I've done all the tests, done all the, what would you call it, studying and stuff. So I've only got to look at the exams, but it was me teaching myself and looking at interest-only mortgages, looking at repayments, things like that, obviously stamp duty. So me one after me world title, I actually bought it from my dad. That was something for me, like taking my dad out of, his house that it was in, which, oh mind me saying, was like a man cave. So my dad lived on his own and it was like a man cave, rouge carpet, not very modern, but my dad doesn't care. So obviously I put him in this house and everything's modern and, everything's neutral creams. And yeah, that was something for me, thing that, right, well, that's my dad done now. So I know he's, I think my dad was in rented accommodation. I think he's been waiting for a year for them to put a gas pipe in his kitchen. He hasn't had a cooker for like a year, so that was my thing of like looking after my dad, know my dad's settled and comfortable.
When I'm able to, I'm going to come up and see you and we're going to discuss how we properties perform better, because there is, as you've now read this book, and I'm so glad you did, because it is a great book, but it does also allow you to explore where your equity is at and how it can perform better for you. Even if we created you a property company and you took out 75% loan to value mortgages on these, and even if they are worth 60 grand and you're taking out 75%, which is what, £45,000, if you've got two of those and I can pull out 90,000 and I can buy you another 4, even at a profit of say £300 a month, that's going to be another 1,200 quid.
100%. But like I said, if you've got someone there saying, right, well, do this, and I'm going to be thinking, well, hang on a minute, how does that? That's when I think you've got to look in it yourself and teach yourself.
Yeah, you do. And I think you've got the right ideas. And I'm not necessarily saying that you need me to do this for you. I think you just now need someone like me to help you suggest.
Yeah, exactly.
And I absolutely love the fact that you've done your CMAP exams. Does that mean, after boxing in 4, 5, 6 years time, whatever it might be, you're going to become a financial partner of...
Well, that's what I mean. I at one stage I thought, I could do that. And then I got halfway through it and I changed onto something else, but it was more because I was looking at these mortgages and I didn't understand percentages and variables. So I thought, I'm gonna do that. But
it's fine.
I've lost interest in that now.
All right, fair enough.
Just getting back to that, it now I understand what you're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, Lee, help me. Should point me in the right direction. But whereas before, you're on about equity and taking money out of here, and you're thinking, I don't understand how. I don't understand. Hang on a minute. I don't want to be getting myself in debt when you're not really.
No, good. I'm glad that penny's dropped now.
Yeah, finally, yeah.
So in your opinion, why is getting property so right to young boxers? You said you bought your first property, was it at 20? 20
hours, yeah.
Okay. And your motivation was homes under the hammer. How do we encourage other young talents like yourself also have other inspirations, but to focus on getting onto the property ladder?
So from my experience, it all just comes with age and life experiences and things like that. So going back, like I said, I got on the squad when I was 18, and then I was getting paid more than what 40-year-old people were getting who'd been through uni, who'd been, working for their company. So and like I said, it was tax-free. So I was probably coming out more than what most people were. And, you live at home with your mum and it's like, right, well, cars, clothes. And then I see it now, even with lads and girls on the squad, and they've got brand new cars, Q5s, things like that, all the nice clobber. And then, like, for me, I remember thinking, well, it's pointless. It doesn't last forever. If anything, the best thing you could buy is a brand new car, because as soon as you drive it out the showroom, it's lost 25% of its value. So I think that's when, obviously, watching Homes of the Haver and having it drilled into me that how it's an investment and how it grows, and over time you can double your money by doing it up and things like that, and you've got an income if you've got tenants in. So, and I've always been aware that sport doesn't last forever. I think I've done really well, really, really well. I'm 30. I'm 30 next month. I've boxed since the age of 11, and I'm under no illusion that my time's coming to an end. But even I don't want to be that woman who's late 30s, still ploughing away, still, face all messed up. There's other things I want to do with my life. I want a family. Like my maternal clock's ticking. One of my good friends has got kids, and she's like, "Your maternal clock's ticking. You can't go on forever." And I think, well, yeah, it's right. You can go on forever. It's not. It's a bit different for the men, but for women, it's one of those things.
When you was 18, training with Team TV, were there other people around you talking to you about what you could maybe do with your money, with your wages?
No, not at all. When I got a bit older, before I left, they just started bringing in people like that. But it's one of them. If you're training 3 times a day, you don't want to take time where you'd probably be having a sleep, ready for the next session, to go and sit in the classroom for an hour to listen to someone bang on. Because I wouldn't, if you're not interested in that, and you've got the coaches saying you've got to go and do this, you've got to go and sit in this lecture, I'd be thinking, no, I want to get back, I want to have my dinner.
I get that, and you've been really supportive with. I know you've obviously watched some of the workshops and the webinars and the education stuff. You actually introduced me to a gentleman who was patient at boxing, and he actually asked for me to send over a copy of the workshop that we did, and he absolutely loved it. He said, right, that's it. How do I get you into these boxing gyms? I'm like, well, look, you just tell me and we'll map out a plan. But then it didn't really come of anything. And I know you were really behind that. Is property some form of conversation, even though you're, as you said, you're 29, 30 next month? Do you talk about property in the gym now with your fellow athletes?
No, not really. But I've got friends who I'd try and, if they asked me, or I'd be like, oh, well, if I was you, I'd do this type thing. But getting back to the whole doing it with boxers or footballers, for instance, if I didn't know you and you just come in the gym and started banging on about it, I wouldn't I'd like to say I'd listen, but I probably wouldn't. But if I had someone like, I don't know, another athlete who'd done it and come in and went, look, a football and being like, look, I thought everything was hunky-dory. I got injured. My whole football career was out, whatever, finished. And I had nothing to fall back on. But I had this little bit of savings, and I wish I'd have done it 10 years ago. Someone who's been there, done it, thinking, look, you can't just rely on your talent all the time because you might not get to where you want to be. I think that would work better for me, personally.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really valuable point. I mean, on the flip side of that, we've spoken to a lot of athletes, and if say, for example, a footballer came in and said that, I think the rest of the squad would look around and say, well, hang on a second, you were only playing last season, so how much do you actually know about this? Whereas I guess I've come from a 20 years of property background, and I think because my dream was always to become a professional athlete as well. Obviously it didn't work out for me, but I attacked the business side so aggressively and focused on my career in property, which has got me to where I am today. And the stuff that we provide, it's quite basic, it's quite simple, it's very clear, and it's related to sports people about property company and building up a passive income. I've seen it firsthand how it can motivate a sports person in whatever the sport, and we've done stuff with like TGB now, and obviously rugby and cricket and football, and hopefully in boxing. But I actually think it gives someone else more focus off and away from sport. So, I mean, the training you do is clearly so intense, but you get much time off. Even as world champ, do you get time off and time away and time to you?
I do, but like I said, I'm the type where I'm constantly thinking. I'm constantly, right, what's my next move?
So say, for example, it was either me or someone else that came into a workshop with the crowd at the gym, and we were, banging on about property. Would you not be, I reckon, within 15, 20 minutes of listening to that workshop, you would feel motivated. And because you're a doer, you'd be like, I'm doing this.
Yeah,
And it would just encourage you to go, right, I'm going to have a plan now. And because you're a doer, you will do it. And then suddenly you've refinanced those couple of assets that you've got. Within 6 months, you bought 3 or 4, and you're in a property company where you've loaned your own money to that company. It's now turning over another 10, 15 grand a year, which you're seeing some serious personal profit from, which you can then. So we've not even spoke about the benefits of a property company before, you and I, have we? But we're going to do it. And I think that you're going to really jump on board because you know, as well as I do, you will do it. And I've never represented you with your 4 assets in the past. I know, we've had many conversations about my advice and different ideas and plans. But because you are a doer, you get on and you do it, and you're buying in the Northeast where you've got a lot of area knowledge, you've got some contact, and it's very comfortable with you. And I've got nothing but admiration for what you've done because it's exactly the right thing to be doing, but the tax benefits are laying somewhere else. And the equity needs to be pulled out of your assets right now, chucked into something else where for you to be personally thinking about in 10 years' time when you're a mum, probably exploring a new career for yourself. Actually, you've still got that passive income coming in from the portfolio. What are your next property plans, Savannah?
So at the minute, like I said, I've had a couple of bad experiences with bad tenants. So I'm not going to lie, it has put me off.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point now where I want to explore different things. So I have always got that option to go back into it and get more whatever, and obviously like the knowledge from you. But I'm at the minute I'm wanting to break into sports. So I'd like to have my own gym. I like strength training, and everyone's into CrossFit, that type of thing. So I'd like to break off into that side. So, maybe going into the commercial, looking at the commercial properties, things like that. And I've had a little look, and I have seen that you can rent, big warehouses cheaper than what you would for a little high street space. That's a lot of what people are doing now, especially the CrossFitters, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really clever idea. I think that with savings, with funds, you don't necessarily have to buy a load of properties. You can apply them and invest them into businesses. And I think, if I'm honest, looking at you and your personality, I think you to invest in yourself is definitely the right way of going about it, and prepare for those next sort of 4 or 5 years and wherever that takes you. But I think you've got a great future, Savannah. I think we all know that. And listen, you're nowhere near looking at retirement. But thank you so much for coming on Talk Sport and Property. You've had a fantastic career today. Long may it continue. And I very much look forward to being part of it as well.
Yes. We need to meet up when this COVID's over.
We do. Give it a few months. I'll be there. Don't worry. Savannah, thank you for coming on Talk Sport and Property. It's great to see you. I'm glad everything's going well for you.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, I've really enjoyed it. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Talk Sport and Property. Visit the App Store and download the MPH Sports app today, or keep up with us over on Instagram.